You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective, and
Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to support Missing Persons and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together, we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Longtime listeners of Missing Persons will remember that in episode 8, we covered the case of Mary Jane Croft VanGilder. Mary Jane Croft was born on November 19, 1911, in Montana, West Virginia, to parents John and Anna Croft, the fourth child of 8 born to the couple. Times were different back then, and Mary Jane married young, saying her I do's with James Wesley VanGilder on January 29, 1929, when she was just 17 years old. The couple had 5 children together, including Mary Jane's daughter Anna May, who was our guest when we first covered this case in episode 8. But when her youngest daughter Cheryl was just 2, Mary Jane left the family. In 1944, she moved out of their farmhouse and into the town of Fairmount, renting an apartment above the old Fairmount Theater. She left James to support the family with his Works Progress Administration's salary, although she sent war bonds home to her daughter Anna to help with the children's expenses. We don't know anything about what Mary Jane did for work while she lived in Fairmount, but sometime soon thereafter, in 1944, she relocated to Plymouth, Ohio, eventually moving into a house on Woodland Avenue in Willard. And investigators were able to find records of her there. On March 7, 1944, Mary Jane started working at the Army Air Force Supply Depot in Shelby, driving a forklift. She earned a steady salary, and this is how she was able to send war bonds she bought at People's Bank back home. She also wrote many letters to her children and sent home packages of clothing. But then, on February 12, 1945, Mary Jane initiated divorce proceedings in Ohio against her husband James. She also wrote Anna and asked her to return the war bonds to her. She ended up cashing them in at different branches of the People's National Bank in Plymouth, Ohio, during the remainder of 1945. James, meanwhile, countersued for divorce in West Virginia. He was granted the divorce and custody of their 5 children. Mary Jane sent one last $25 war bond to her children, and then they never heard from her again. On April 4, 1946, Mary Jane's Ohio divorce petition was dismissed at her cost and request. It's unclear whether she contacted the court and asked them to drop the case, or whether they dropped it because she didn't show up at court. After that, Mary Jane Croft VanGilder dropped off the face of the earth. The search for Mary Jane over the decades has been comprehensive. Her brother, Lester Croft, initiated an official search for his sister when he returned from World War II. He got law enforcement involved, and the police in Plymouth, Ohio, sent a letter to Mary Jane's last known employer, the Army Air Force Depot in Shelby, asking if they knew where she'd gone. A May 20th, 1952 letter from U.S. Air Force First Lieutenant Edwin Selzer of the Army Air Force Depot read, quote, Mrs. VanGilder left our employ on 8 March 1945 due to, quote, added household duties. Her address at the time of her resignation was 2 Trucks Street, Plymouth, Ohio. Prior to her residence at the above address, she resided at 311 Woodland Avenue, Willard, Ohio, end quote. That was 7 years earlier. No one had any idea what the household duties Lieutenant Selzer referenced were or where on earth Mary Jane could have gone. As an adult, Mary Jane's daughter Anna wrote letters to the FBI about her missing mother, receiving personal letters back from J. Edgar Hoover himself. She also contacted the Social Security Administration, the U.S. Treasury, the Ohio State Highway Patrol, and other authorities. But not until 2004 was any more information uncovered, and even then, it pertained exclusively to the time period before Mary Jane vanished. William H. King of Willard, Ohio, read an article about the case of the missing woman in the Plymouth Journal, a newspaper in Ohio, and he emailed Anna's niece, who was named in the article. According to William King's letter, his father and 2 brothers had worked with Mary Jane at the Army Air Force Depot in the time period 1943 to 1945. Mary Jane was good friends with William's parents, he said. Quote, I was just 13 at the time, but I remember your grandmother very well. She had long dark hair to her shoulders and was a very cheerful person, end quote. Unfortunately, William King did not have any information about what had happened to Mary Jane after 1945. Mary Jane's mother died in 1963, and Mary Jane did not attend the funeral. At that point, I think it's safe to say that everyone believed that Mary Jane was dead. The complete lack of communication from her to her 5 children and her 7 siblings, and failure to show up at her own mother's funeral said it all. James VanGilder died in 1985, and the family home burned to the ground in the 1980s. There was nothing of Mary Jane Croft VanGilder left but her children and their memories of her. In 2018, Mary Jane's granddaughter Mindy Wilson Facebook messaged the police chief in Shelby, Ohio, and requested an investigation into her grandmother's whereabouts. Detective Adam Turner opened a missing persons investigation and entered Mary Jane's personal information into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, or NamUs, as well as the Charlie Project and the Doe Network. This had never been done, and it allowed the detective to start investigating unidentified human remains cases to compare them to what he knew about Mary Jane's physical characteristics. These were that she was 33 years old when last accounted for, a Caucasian female, about 5 foot 5 inches tall, weighing about 140 pounds, with wavy brown hair and brown eyes. But a lot of Jane Does matched this description, and Detective Turner ended up futilely exhuming Jane Does in Indiana, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Mississippi, and comparing their physical characteristics to Mary Jane's. He spent thousands of hours working Mary Jane's case. Then, in 2019, Detective Turner learned of a skeletonized Jane Doe who'd been found in a stream bed in Eaton, Preble County, Ohio, in 1968. She was estimated to be a white female, approximately 35 years old, between 5'2" and 5'4" inches tall, and about 132 pounds. In other words, her physical characteristics fit the description of Mary Jane to a T. He arranged for Preble County Jane Doe to be exhumed and tested. An October 2023 press release stated, quote, the Shelby, Ohio Police Department, in conjunction with the Preble County Coroner's Office, exhumed in 2019 the unidentified remains of an unknown person found in a drainage ditch in 1968 in Eaton, Ohio. This was performed for the purpose of conducting DNA analysis to compare to a missing persons investigation, Mary Jane Croft VanGilder, from 1945, end quote. A press conference was held announcing the results of the analysis of the exhumed remains. And boy, did everybody get a surprise. Preble County Jane Doe was not a Jane Doe at all. He was a John Doe. he was most certainly not Mary Jane Croft VanGilder. Forensic genealogy was used to identify Preble County John Doe. Moxie Forensic Investigations did the work and was able to identify John Doe. His name was Albert Allen Frost. He was diminutive and thin, which is why his scattered remains were mistaken as female. And of course, he was found long before DNA was available to determine his sex. Keep an eye out for an episode on Albert Frost on DNA ID. Meanwhile, where did that leave the Mary Jane Croft VanGilder investigation? Back at square one. But then Detective Turner caught a break. Mary Jane's military records contained all kinds of seemingly irrelevant information, with dozens of names of her supervisors and so on. The records reflected that within days of her divorce filing in February 1945, she was promoted to high lift and fork operator. She took over that job from a man named Percy L. Sebren, who held that position before her and probably trained her. Percy Sebren had died in 1969. Detective Turner looked into this Percy Sebren, read his obituary, and noted that his wife was listed as Mary Jane Sebren. Her date of birth was the same as Mary Jane Croft VanGilder's. The answer was right there all along. You'll recall that the VanGilder family learned that Mary Jane resigned from her job at the Wilkins Army Depot on March 8, 1945. This was when she mentioned having household duties to take care of. She married Percy Sebren, or at least she took his name. A marriage certificate for the two has never been located. Their son, Percy Sebren Jr., was born 9 months later. The family relocated to Arkansas and had another son, Kenneth. Side-by-side photos of Mary Jane in the 1940s and in the 1980s leave no doubt that she was the same person. Her signature remained the same on documents from 80 years ago and documents from before she died. Her grandchildren from her relationship with Percy have confirmed from photos that Mary Jane Croft VanGilder was the woman they knew only as Mary Jane Sebren. They had no idea about her former life. Percy Sebren Sr. was hit and killed by a train in 1969. According to Cleveland19.com, quote, Mary Jane died on May 31, 1990 of colon cancer and was buried alongside her husband Percy in his home state of Louisiana, end quote. One of her granddaughters said that on her deathbed, Mary Jane said she had a secret, but did not share what it was. She died not sharing with either of her families the existence of the other. It's very hard for us to wrap our heads around the decisions Mary Jane Croft VanGilder made. There were rumors that her first husband was an abusive alcoholic. As a woman in the 1940s, Mary Jane likely did not feel she had recourse in the court system to remove herself and her children from the household. I like to give her the benefit of the doubt and think that she left to protect herself and moved not far away, sending letters, money, and clothing back to her kids. Then she met Percy Sebren at her job at the Army Depot and got pregnant. As a single pregnant woman in the 1940s, I suspect she felt she had no choice but to marry the baby's father. She would surely get fired from her job when she started to show. And it seems she really loved Percy, as they remained together and raised a family that described her as the perfect grandmother. But any way you slice it, it's hard to understand or justify her decision to never contact her first 5 children again. It was clearly a choice. She obtained and used a different Social Security number after she left her job at the Army Depot. She wanted to disappear. It's the exact theory that we almost always dismiss in missing persons cases, that the person just left to start a new life. It almost never happens. But in this case, Mary Jane Croft VanGilder never disappeared at all. She just took a new name and didn't look back. Of course, it was a lot easier to do that in the 1940s than it would be today. And presumably she believed that her 2 families would never learn about each other. But now they have, and they're left to try to accept the fact that they never really knew who Mary Jane was at all.
Be sure to join us back here on the next episode of Missing Persons when we have an updated conversation with Detective Adam Turner, who solved this case. We first spoke with him back in episode 8 of the podcast. At the same time, we spoke to Mary Jane Croft VanGilder's daughter, Anna. We're going to replay Anna's segment here in the remainder of this episode. And if you want to go back and listen to our original discussion with Detective Turner, we'll link to that episode in the show notes. Hi, Anna, and thank you for joining me to discuss your mother, Mary Jane's case on missing persons. Your mother has been missing for 75 years.
She's been missing since 1945, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that's a very long time. How old were you when she went missing?
Well, I was born in 1931, and 1944 was when she went to work in Ohio. She worked for a company down there, and she started work the 7th of March of 1944 and worked until March the 8th, 1945. At that time, she had sent me war bonds through a company from Fairfield, Ohio, and she wrote me and asked me to return those to her in 1945. I sent them all. One came back after that. These bonds were cashed at various states in 1945. A lady thought they might have saw her in the along the streets in Ohio after she had quit working. We have not been able to find anything about where she went from them. I have searched. I sent letters until 1949, and they were returned. In 1949, my uncle came out of the Marine Navy, I believe, and he went to the sheriff of Marion County, which is in West Virginia. And Mr. Kane of Marion County started a search, and he sent letters to me and my dad. And at that time, in 1949, I started searching. I have searched in Ohio. I have been to J. Edgar Hoover. I have been everywhere that I can think of and anybody else can think of. Now then, Adam has got it. Well, he started that about a year ago or something like that, and he's done a lot. I have a niece that's named Mindy and one that's named Misty, and they have been with me.
Let me ask you a question about when your mom disappeared. Were the two of you close when she disappeared?
I wrote to my mother from the time she disappeared from the time she went to work until she disappeared. I had lots of letters from her. At one time she said clothing. I don't remember her ever sending any money. I know she sent clothing when I was still in school. And that would have been probably when I was maybe in the 8th grade. I don't remember what year it was.
Really missing her, I would think, while she was gone, and then when she disappeared, you were without her all that time.
I wasn't very old when she disappeared. I wrote to some girl, a friend of hers, while she was still writing to me. I left all my stuff in my press at my home when I married, and when I went back to look for it, it was all gone. And I did not remember a lot of stuff at that time, and still don't. But when I was probably 14, 15 years old when she went, she worked in Fairmont for a while, and I visited her one time there maybe for a weekend, and from then, she just disappeared from then. The next time I heard from her was when she was working in Ohio.
When you got a little bit older, you mentioned that you started looking for her and going out and trying to find out where she went, what happened to her. What kind of help did you get from police? Did they have any kind of clues to work with back then?
I had no help from no one except that one letter that stated that a person had saw her in the streets, I believe. I can't remember. I have to go back and look at the letter, and that was the only thing. I had no help from anyone until Adam started working on it. I had searched through the computer. I had wrote lots of letters when I didn't have a computer. I worked with Ancestry. I've searched a lot of Mary Jane Crofts and Mary VanGilders and found nothing. Adam has done the same thing, and he's found nothing either that I know of. I know Misty had worked with me, and she, between the two of us, we found nothing.
So a lot of dead ends or places where you couldn't find any more information about what happened.
Well, I have looked, Ohio has 88 counties that have everything in them. Now, in 1945, she filed for divorce out of Huron County, Huron, Huron County, Ohio. At that divorce, at that time, my dad, I guess when he got the notice, he went ahead and filed for the divorce. We heard nothing. I didn't even know about this until my dad and my stepdad had died, and my half-sister sent this paper to me where she had filed for the divorce, and that was, that she had filed in 45, and somebody said in 46 she had dropped it, but I think it just automatically dropped when my dad got his. I know that my dad got married, I believe, in 46. I not remember exactly. I have to look that up.
You mentioned this went on not knowing what happened to your mom for the majority of your life, and here you are almost 3/4 of a century later. You still don't have the answers, but you mentioned that Adam has taken on the case and has tried to help you with using new techniques, new technology and stuff. How great for you to have him looking into it all these years later.
I believe that my niece Mindy got this started. She, I guess we're all concerned. We would all like to know what happened to her. I know Adam has done all kinds of stuff, and he has a lot more knowledge than I do. And though I have searched through Ancestry.com for a lot of years and have found nothing. I've found a lot of Mary Crofts, but I cannot find a Social Security number that would help me do this.
Have you tried, or has anyone in your family tried submitting their DNA into Ancestry.com?
I have a DNA. Misty has one, and Mindy has one, and Mary, my sister's daughter, has one. So I've put mine in, and but I have a DNA in there, and I've had it for 2 or 3 years, but I've found nothing. I've found people that I'm related to, but not to my mother.
Yeah, and that's the key, is hoping that somewhere along the line you'd find a link to your mom there, and not seeing that. It sounds like that could be cause for concern that possibly something, bad happened to her back then. You don't think that she would have ever gone off and just started a new life on her own? Do you think that something
that's something I had thought about. I know there was a name of somebody that was in those letters, but like I said, the letters disappeared, and I cannot remember the name. Like I said, I was, 14, 15? I was married when I was 16. So at that time, I sort of didn't lose interest, but I had thought she had remarried, and we have searched, my sister and I, for maybe she had a child. But where we searched, we did not find anything. So, and I have not been able to find where she had gotten married again or anything like that. We know she would have gotten a divorce when my dad got his.
But all those roads have led nowhere in tracking down anything about her.
Well, I don't know why she would have not kept in touch with us. I know her mother died in 1963, I believe. But nobody saw her then. She was listed as a family member, her and my Aunt Rose and my Uncle Johnny. My Uncle John had disappeared too, but he was found. Due to that we had a Social Security number, we found him after he had passed away. We have not been able to find my Aunt Rose or my mother.
I know it's been a very long journey, over 75 years. That's a very long time to be looking for a loved one, especially someone, your mother, who I'm sure you would have loved to have had relationship growing up with and becoming an adult. How difficult has it been not having her in your life all these years?
Well, after a while, you get sort of used to it, but you still keep searching. Like I said, I'll lay it down for a little while, then I go back. In fact, I'm back now looking through a lot of Mary Crofts that I had been through probably 5-6 years ago. And I know Adam has a list of them, but this is ones I have listed that had gotten a Social Security number in Ohio. So the ones I'm going to search now is going to be those. Well, I still have hopes. I know that the girls have Misty and Mindy, that's Barbara's children, have been, I know Missy has looked longer than Mindy has. And I know I have looked longer than any of them. I'm the oldest of the children she had, and she had 5.
Do you think that she got married and started a new life and just a new identity, or do you think that maybe after she got remarried, something happened to her?
Well, that has always been my thought until recently I've started thinking, well, what happened to her, Like I said, if I could have found those letters, it would have helped me. But I couldn't find them. They were gone. My dad had gotten remarried, and somebody had accidentally cleaned the area out I had to keep my stuff in. So they were gone. And I couldn't find the girl's name or address that I had wrote to. It had been too long. Even 4 or 5 years was too long. When I started looking for her, after my uncle came out of the Navy in 1949 of November, that was a long time. And now that it's been a lot of years, and it's still hard, but I'm still thinking that there'll be a Social Security number somewhere that I will find and find out what happened to her. Maybe I have other relatives. I don't know. If they are, there is none of them cropped up in DNA, because I have that record of that where it comes from the ancestor.
How important is it to you after this much time's gone by to how great would it be to find out, just have an answer of what happened to her?
Well, it would be a weight off of my mind. I'm now 89 years old, so it would be a weight off of my mind, and I'm sure that Misty and Mindy, it would be a blessing to them. It's very important to me to find out. I have looked all these years, and that's a lot of years, a lot of time spent. But I do not think it's been a waste of time. I just think it's something I have not been able to find.
And I think your situation proves that no matter how long somebody's missing, you keep searching for them because you want to know what happened to them, even if it's 75 years.
Well, since 1945 was the last time I heard from her. And when I started looking for her, I had one address and one war bond. That's what I had. And I think I'm a long ways, and I think Adam has came a long ways. But that's what I had to start with, was one address and one war bond.
Well, you've definitely got a good team by your side, and I wish you luck digging and looking for clues, and hopefully you have some kind of resolution and find out what happened to your mom.
Well, I hope so, too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, we're on Facebook at facebook.com/missingpersonspod. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us and contact us through our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.